Welcome to How to Decorate from Ballard Designs, a podcast all about the trials and triumphs of decorating and redecorating your home. Each week, we'll help you unleash your inner decorator. I'm Caroline, and I'm on the marketing team.
And I'm Taryn, and I'm a product designer.
And I'm Liz. I head up the Ballard creative team.
We're your hosts.
Join the expert team at Ballard Designs for tips, tricks, and tales from interior designers, stylists, and other talents in the design world.
Plus, we'll answer a listener question at the end of each show.
So don't forget to send them to podcast@ballarddesigns.net.
Yes, we love answering them.
Now, on with the show.
Our guest today is award-winning Atlanta interior designer Robert Brown. In addition to being named Southeastern Designer of the Year by Veranda Magazine, he has over 20 ASID awards, as well as a shop, Townhouse. His spaces are tailored and highly edited, leaning on contrast and bold silhouettes to create a timeless, sophisticated room. Throughout his work, he skillfully blends antiques with modern pieces. So we're going to talk about bringing antiques into your home in a way that feels fresh and exciting. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, I don't know about you, Taryn, but I loved going through your portfolio and getting to see all the spaces. Obviously, as I mentioned, and you use antiques a lot throughout your client spaces, but you always sort of pair them with more contemporary pieces. And then I was also just so struck by how dramatic and bold they feel while also being very, very highly edited, as I mentioned, and like tailored. So I feel like it's hard to pull off both of those at once, create focal points, but it being still streamlined and clean. No, you're giving me a funny.
No, it is. You have a lot of stuff in these rooms, but it doesn't read as, oh, there's a hoarder. You know what I mean? There's a fine line there. And I do think you've styled it so well. And so I think this topic is wonderful just because a lot of us have something old that we love that just we want to make work. Or again, just getting, we are only buying from, places like Ballard and seeing, retailers. And we know we need that layer of antique. And how do we bring it in to pair with these newer pieces?
Yeah, I think, antiques have always been important to me, and it's in an interior just immediately brings character to the space. Mm-hmm. If it's something that you've inherited or you've collected on your own or whatever, it just automatically brings something that really kind of means something in a space. And it doesn't have to be a lot of antiques. Sometimes we do 2 or 3, and sometimes we even do none. But I really like doing that because we're big believers in using things you have, for example, and I think an antique is, just brings that character, which is, important to a space.
Very.
Well, okay. I think many of us have pieces that we've gotten from our family, but when it's something that maybe you didn't pick out for yourself, it can be challenging to reimagine it and know whether is this good? Yeah.
And sometimes things don't work. Sometimes we have a client that has something that is really important, and it's just sometimes hard to work around it. If it's like some Victorian, crazy overdone piece, and then the rest of the interiors that you're kind of scheming with a client, it may not work. And you have to just, tell them it doesn't. And sometimes reimagining the piece, whether you're refinishing it or using it in an unexpected way, like you may take a chest that's not working in another space, or maybe you cut the top and put a, sink in it, put it for a powder room, and it can carry that whole space. It may not go somewhere else. So it's you have to cleverly think of how you're, using the piece. But sometimes we'll go into homes where a client is downsizing, for example, and we're getting to choose which pieces to bring with us, which we love that. So sometimes you're like, oh, let's take this Regency sideboard because it's nice and clean and simple. Don't take that piece that, it's from some other period or some weird place or something that just doesn't work. That's ideal. That's ideal.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody that maybe does have a couple of pieces and they're just kind of like, I don't like them. I mean, I don't love them. I don't dislike them, but I don't love them. But how do you know?
A client recently had a rocking chair that was several generations old, and it just was so overdone. And we thought, well, we could strip it and, put a nice finish on it. Oh, that's not even enough. I mean, just kind of got the thing like, okay, we're going to let this go in a bedroom and we're going to let that tell the story in the bedroom. And everything else in the bedroom was incredibly simple. And it almost jumped out as being that odd piece that you didn't know what to do with, but it was a conversation you could have about that piece. So it worked in that way. So you,
That's a good call.
have to think that kind of,
So maybe it's just like having that be your starting point and choosing things to go with that instead of trying to shove it into something.
Yeah, that piece was so strong that you could put nothing else with it. So we did an upholstered headboard like you guys would have here, just really simple bedding. The bedside chests were almost invisible, and that ran the room.
Yeah.
And told the story.
Exactly.
Well, that or find someone else to love it, right?
Well, and you do have to make those hard choices sometimes. It's just like, this really does not work. And you tell, I mean, the client's in charge. We always tell clients, we're not going to make you do anything. I think there might be some designers that do try to go that way. But we try to explain why it doesn't work. And usually they'll get it.
Right.
And maybe you do put it in storage for another generation. Right?
True.
Let your kids take it later or something. But if it doesn't make sense at all, it's almost like, the weed in the garden. It just jumps out.
Do you think most of your clients, they kind of know?
Most of our clients are pretty sophisticated and know.
I think most of us have a gut reaction when there's okay, I'm just not feeling this. I've tried. It's not working.
Yeah. And we say, tell your mother-in-law it's our fault. I mean, you don't take the blame. You don't take the blame at all. Let us be the bad guys.
Yeah.
And because, we won't see her ever again.
Yeah.
So,
okay, well, what about good pieces, though?
Well, there are a lot of good pieces. We love salvaging good pieces. And in fact, we have the opposite. Sometimes clients are trying to get rid of good pieces. Like, oh, no, don't. No. Don't do that. My accountant doesn't like it when I do that. But we need to sell more furniture. But, there's a lot of that. And we'll build rooms around that. It's, we don't like to do, totally traditional antique projects where everything is that way, but it's just not interesting anymore to us, to have a whole period house or whatever. We have an old client that just came back and they're really trying to push us that way. And, we're sitting around the conference table like, can we even do this? I mean, do we even know how to do, a totally traditional where every piece is an antique and every piece of upholstery is curved and whatever. And we kind of figured it out. It took us a minute. And we did things like we made all the upholstery, all the fabrics neutral. We really sparsely did the art. I mean, we just kind of, really edited the heck out of it to where, this actually, I don't hate this. I don't hate it at all. We put a, beautiful old rug that was too small on top of a seagrass rug. And we... it was hard for us though. Yeah. Our bread and butter is taking a beautiful, simple chest, antique chest, and throwing a great contemporary painting over it, and putting a nice, transitional, which is a weird word, lamp on it. That's easy.
That always works.
That always works.
Always looks fabulous. So what is it about a modern piece of art over an old antique wood chest that has? I mean, it's just
smart. Killer. It just feels fresh. And it's just you got a little history. You've got, cool hip. I mean, it's just it just works. It really does work.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, for example, the house you just were talking about, what is the actual architecture? Does the architectural match the period in which?
Well, it did.
Okay.
So it's this historic house here in Atlanta. And I would have preferred it to be a modern house and put all the antiques in the modern house. That would have been enough of a balance change. But that almost made it worse because the floors were dark and, there's a lot of millwork that they didn't want to paint. And it was exactly what you're thinking. Yeah. It was traditional all the way.
Okay. So that's a good way, because I do think that a lot of people have that situation where they've gotten into a home and it's so period specific. How do you...
Yeah, it's hard to envision.
What do you put in it? Because to your point, you might not have inherited the right pieces to go in a Tudor, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't know how to stylistically do this.
Yeah, it all boils down to the balance and the, if it's a very traditional envelope, we'll want to put more modern stuff in it, furniture, rugs, fabrics, what have you. If it's a house that's just, it doesn't really say a lot architecturally, it's easier to put more antiques in or more to add the character. You really have to start with that architectural envelope no matter what. It's just what it is. I mean, sometimes we have the luxury of, I'm doing a renovation at my house, and we're actually ripping crown molding out, which is a big deal.
That is a big deal.
I don't think I've ever asked a client to do that. It's just what
like instigated that choice.
It kind of started with a simple new kitchen and new master bath, and we knew we wanted that to be very modern, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So we changed it. It really does. Yeah. And so the envelope is going to go from a traditional envelope to being more modern. And we're all about proportions. So say 2/3 of everything will be modern, and only a third will be antiques. So I think it's going to make the few antiques that we want to keep that are important to us really be kind of the star of the show and the centerpieces. Where now it's a little bit of a flip, where we have mostly traditional with some great art, contemporary art, and a contemporary coffee table and those kind of things. We're kind of flipping the envelope a bit.
Got it. So is that what you would normally say? Like, if you have a traditional house, and I'm trying to make this really simple. I know that there's nuance, but like, if you've got a traditional house, a traditional envelope, maybe do 2/3 like more contemporary sleek lines, and then 1/3 antique that kind of has that vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why I try to turn this into math and stuff. Because
no, it's good. It's good.
It's not that, but I'm a big believer in this, thirds or threes, and I'm all about that odd number. And that's the way I think about it. Absolutely.
But it's such a good nugget too to take away.
Yeah, it just works.
To be like, all right, this is the ratio in which
it
to work
really,
with it.
really works. It always does. And the proportion means not like you divide up the furniture in that many. It's like what that feels like in the space. So 1/3 of the space needs to be this, and 2/3 of the space needs to feel like this. And it always works.
I think that's so, it's just very smart. And I feel like you could apply it just so, like, I live in a sort of weird, sort of mid-century modern thing, and I am not like a...
Why are you calling your house weird?
You don't think it's weird?
She lives in a spaceship. Yeah. No, I don't think your home's weird.
It has a kind of a weird floor plan, sort of a strange front entrance.
You have a weird front entrance.
It's unconventional, I guess. Maybe would be a better word. But I'm not like a huge mid-century modern person, but I've tried to like do a little bit just because...
We kind of have to embrace it if that's what you're living in.
Yeah, like it kind of... I feel like without it, it would be
she has like
strange.
An L shape for lack of house, but the doors in the middle of the L, like to enter the home.
Yeah.
And then like the whole back of the L is like all windows, like the 70s, 60s windows. Yeah, but you're traditional.
You say it's unconventional?
But I'd say you have 2/3 traditional and 1/3
unconventional or untraditional.
I said it backwards. The way he said it.
Untraditional.
Bob had it correctly.
Yeah.
So it works.
And it works. And it works. And so I feel like you could, kind of apply that to whatever your situation is,
for sure.
No, I agree. I have a newer build. The outside we gave definitely a ode to traditional for sure of architecture. But inside it, we do have crown molding and base molding, but pretty simple. Yeah. And so I need more antiques in there because I can't walk into Ballard and buy everything right now because it would look like the catalog.
Yeah.
It would have no depth. So we can
you need a little bit more like...
I need some
I don't want to use the word scruffiness, but
Oh, yeah. My kids are helping to age things. There's a lot of, natural aging going on. There you go. We are adding patina daily. But it is funny. I think that's a great way to put it and a great example for people to follow.
Yeah. Okay. What about shopping for antiques? Because I do think that's very intimidating. Certainly for me.
Do you really? I think, that's interesting. Do people think that's intimidating?
Okay, like the
depends
one that's
on
called
the location, but
Mima had it. I'll walk into Mima had it and not feel, but like a nice antique store.
Yes.
I get worried for sure. I'm intimidated.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Like fancy people.
I guess, there's some antique stores like that. Well, so I spend 24/7 on auctions online.
Yeah. Oh.
It's a bad thing that I've been asked at my house to stop doing that so much. And I have stopped a bit. And then I learned early on not to have 2 glasses of wine. And then you buy things that you might not would have so I've learned how to work auctions. Yeah. And there's amazing clearance houses now, like Live Auctioneers and there's other people that do it, that you really work it, putting keywords. Like I have these things I'm always looking for. Like I'm always looking for Regency, or I'm always looking for,
Caroline's making
you know,
a
I
list.
know.
and my favorite thing is to put pears of walnut, and then you'll get pears of walnut chest, whatever. So you kind of learn how to play the game.
Look at you.
Because
I
pears
know.
are
Give
hard
us
to
the
do.
actual keywords. I love this.
Yeah.
Take notes.
Rock crystal's always in there. Just things that I like. And then so you get up every morning, you got a bunch of emails. Some days you can look at it, some days you can't. And that's I buy tons that way. I buy tons online, sight unseen. Very risky. You make mistakes.
High reward.
It can be very high reward. And then they're where we live, us in Atlanta, I can go run look at them if they're at a shop or what have you. Or if I'm taking a trip and I can, I'm going to New York and I have a few things I'm watching, I could go look. But then, I've made mistakes. But you learn what to look for.
Yeah.
You learn to ask the auction house questions. Because they don't always put everything you need to know.
Can you give us an example?
Well, like recently, I was looking at a sculpture. It was it was probably mid-century sculpture. I'm a big bronze sculpture, modern sculpture kind of guy, and I got a sense of the size of it, but it didn't tell me the size. So I asked, they didn't answer, and I finally well, it's time to bid on this thing. Do I buy it or not? And I did.
Oh no.
And I thought, well, this the price I'm paying for it. I'm okay if it's not very big. And I don't know why they never answered, and I don't know why I just been helping on having it, but I did. And it came in, it was like a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch little orb kind of thing, which is really cool. But then I'm like, I paid too much for that size.
Yeah.
So I bought it for no particular reason to put in my shop, I guess. Like, well, we're not going to make any markup on that. So this is a mistake.
Yeah.
But it was not a lot of money, so it was okay.
Yeah.
But then I've had other examples where it's the crazy extreme. One night I told this weekend at a wedding reception. One night I was watching and this emerald, like a raw emerald, unset emerald came up. Like 100-something carats. I mean, something just stupid. I'm like, well, I don't understand why this is not right. And they had all the paperwork to validate it. I'm like, I don't understand why nobody's bidding on this. And a couple of people did. Like, I got it for almost nothing. And I'm like, well, it could be a paperweight. I mean, it was it was such a good bargain. So it shipped, and it's like the size of a baked potato. I mean, it is the biggest darn thing ever. And it's a big joke in our house. It lives in our junk drawer in the kitchen. And then it fell behind. We lost it for 2 years. And we found it. It fell out of the drawer. So that was a big deal because when people come over, it invariably comes up.
Yeah.
Because people are always interested in what I do. And so I'm like, well, we've got this emerald story. And we found it. So it's good now. And now we're going to cut it up and make some nice jewelry. You girls want some earrings?
I mean,
heck yeah.
if you're outfit
match Taryn's outfit
green today, I would love something
for that. So
That is
sometimes
so
you just
okay.
look into something and it actually has some value.
Do you feel like you bought something off the black market that somebody stole from somewhere?
Well, I have not thought that. Thank you very much. I hope not. But maybe, I'm such a goody-goody.
They didn't make
I'm
very
just
much
like,
from it, apparently.
yeah. And it's not that valuable, but it's just interesting. So,
That is a fun.
I mean, auctions are just crazy. But your original question was antiques.
Yes.
And, I guess they are intimidating to me, but I guess I've learned so much over time. You can look at how something's made and you can look at a finish. And, unless you're in the profession, you're just not going to know all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it just takes time to learn that. And finding good dealers is important. I mean, I shop, of course, online, but I go to Europe 2 or 3 times a year, or I'm going wherever to, if I need inventory. And people I really rely on them. I mean, I've learned to trust people. And then this kind of thing where I can even, send an email and say, hey, I'm really low on this, and what do you have? And my friends put in a container. Can we put a container together and send over? So it's gotten to be that, which is easier and more cost effective to do that.
Sure. Because I sometimes feel like it's a little bit like going to the car mechanic where I'm like, I don't really know a ton. And so I'm afraid I'm going to ask a dumb question and then they're going to think you're an idiot and I can tell you anything.
But see, I'm that way with a car dealer.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nothing about cars. So there are other things in my life, a lot of things in my life I don't know a darn thing about. And you just I guess it's a trust thing. And you ask around. I think my wife's really good about researching stuff, on the internet. And so we were driving back from the beach and I'm like, I need an orthopedic doctor, and my knee hurts or something. So I'm like, okay, here's your go to. I vetted him. I've got this, this exchange thing she's a member of, and like, okay, here's your. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So I think we have such access to such resources now. You can really check stuff out.
So if you go into a shop though, like, is it okay to ask questions? Should you ask questions?
I think the more questions you ask, the smarter you look, and even if you don't know stuff, you have to. I mean, it's just, and then a big picture thing too is if something you love and it's a price that you think is fair, I mean, are you really buying this as an investment? Mm-hmm. That's okay if you are. But if you love it, I mean, I talk to clients about art all the time. Art's a big part of what we do. And it's like, wow, that's an expensive piece of art, or that's not as much as I thought we'd spend. And I'm like, well, I want you to sit at, and look at your sofa every day, and that painting over it I want it to speak to you and enjoy it, So I think it's the same thing with antiques. I think if it's something you really love, it fits the purpose, it's functional, to do what you need it to do. And
it's right size.
Yeah, right size.
Yeah.
Size is a big deal.
It just matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think also people love to tell a story if they know it, especially at some of these dealers? Like if they have the story of the piece?
Yeah. So it's like they want to talk about it, and you should ask, and knowing that like they're probably excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but also be ready for...
I mean, you might be there for a while.
Well, and sometimes I'll think, is that story real? Like, was that, pedestal, because this is an experience, is that pedestal, was that really in that house in England? Like, why did they just get rid of that pedestal? How does that even happen? How do you know that?
Yeah.
But then I'm like, well, I'm not paying for that. I'm not going to pay more because it has this provenance.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all that.
Yeah. That's fair, though, again.
I'm trying to overthink that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, realistically, you shouldn't buy a piece of furniture thinking that you're going to resell it for, like, more than... It's not like...
Yeah. Well, like, for instance, again, this is just pottery, but I went to Red Wing, Minnesota for a wedding. It is a small town. It's where Red Wing shoes are made. But they had... Or out of whatever. I'm not sure. I didn't get the whole history on the shoes. But there was this big old barn, and it was full of all these big crocks and like all different leaders. And they had this beautiful little symbol on the side, this little leaf and like a big number. And I was like, I need like all of these. Tell me more. And then, but it was obviously just those. Like it's a whole shop. Home. Well, I had to get there next anyway. But they ended up telling me, oh, there's a museum over there, and they walk you through. The factories are all long gone, but like this was, and they showed anyway, and they were so in on the stories though that I ended up buying like the biggest one I could carry on an airplane because that's all I could do. I was like, well, I can fit this in my lap, so I have like a 3-liter.
Were you literally walking through the airport holding that?
I took a kid out of the stroller and I put it in the stroller and I wore the child. Yeah.
Okay,
funny.
So I could have worn the pot probably. No, the kid's easier to wear
I've
than
brought
the
a lot
pot.
of things back from trips and all, but back to your, antiquing, a lot of what I think about is what I'm going to have to do to the piece when I get it. Is it going to be refinished or not? Is it ready to go? And then getting it here.
Yeah.
So there's a gallery, auction house that I really love in LA, but I gotta seriously want it because the cost of transportation is typically a lot. I gotta really plot that. It's gotta make sense. So that's the downside of internet antiquing.
Yeah, that was actually What is the shipping like on a piece? Are you buying like case goods?
Art's easy.
Yeah.
I'll even have somebody take a canvas and unstretch it and roll it up and throw it in a tube. You get clever with what you're doing. Case pieces are typically very expensive. So, I go into an auction where I see maybe 6 or 7. I'm thinking about the same thing at this dealer in LA. Well, I'm going to get a lot of pieces. And then somebody's bidding a lot against me. I bought one. I got one. And I'm going to the next piece, and somebody really wants it more than I do. I'm like, okay, well, that just made the first piece go more expensive because I'm not shipping as many. So it's really, it's going to be really crazy. And then I know people, I can leave it in a warehouse in LA. Do I have several other pieces to bring here? There's, that option too. We know a few people that, that's just kind of what they do is run antiques around the country, but you're kind of on their schedule. So if it's for a project, it may not work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of big business to do all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's complicated. So, for your average listener, it's probably not the easiest thing unless it's something particular they really want and there's not a lot of them and they found it and you just need to jump on it and get it.
Right. Okay.
But with the online auctions too, you can put your city, can't you? I assume it's a very smaller, or depending where you live, smaller
for
radius.
Sure,
for
sure. You can put, the 100 miles radius or whatever.
Okay.
And then there's some houses, auctions, people in Atlanta, wherever your listeners are, and I always go through, with a fine tooth comb those because we can just, go pick them up in a truck. And so you basically aren't paying any, transportation.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, from Europe, it's a little harder. And when there were no containers available during COVID and all those crazy things, which I'm sure you guys know better than anybody with, all the things you're doing, that was miserable.
Yeah. We ship a lot of furniture.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It is not easy.
No.
New or old.
Well, and luckily, from my fashion days, we imported from all over the world. So I had experience that the normal interior designer wouldn't have,
Yeah.
About bringing things in from, Timbuktu.
Well, can we pivot to that? You cool with that? I want to hear more about his first.
Your shop. Yeah. I mean, I have other questions, but we can come back to
No.
No, you could do whatever.
Stay on your train of thought.
Well, no, I was just curious, especially with your client projects, if there are like certain things that you kind of always go to as picking the antique. Like, is it a chest? Is it a side table? Is it an occasional chair? Are there certain things that you feel like are kind of always going to work?
Well, as far as antiques go,
Yeah. Antique
Like
dining table with like a new chair.
Yeah,
or something.
so like in a dining room, an antique sideboard's always amazing.
Yeah.
A living space, a chest is great. A foyer chest is great with either a mirror, even a contemporary mirror over it, or a piece of art. So there are some things that work better. Side tables, typically antiques aren't good sizes.
Like they're too small?
They're too small, and they really didn't have them. And cocktail tables, they really didn't have those in the day. I mean, you can take some other thing like a chest or something and make a cocktail table. Beds, for example, the sizes are all different. So beds are terrible. I mean, we love an upholstered headboard anyway. Just a basic Ballard linen covered headboard is, primo with maybe a great antique round table beside the bed instead of a chest. So some things just suit themselves to be better that way. Chair. I love some antique chairs, like a pair of French chairs, or it could be some mid-century modern chairs with little exposed wood or something. But typically, you're having to rebuild those somehow, some way to make them comfortable. Dining chairs. I'm a big guy, so dining chairs don't typically work for me, and I just think they don't work for my clients either. And they can be wobbly, and you can repair them as the scales sometimes, or a lot of times a little small. Where the population's getting bigger and bigger, so you have to think about those things.
Or just like a natural seat that breaks down. So again, like, are you repairing them? Or you
rebuild the seat?
Exactly. And sometimes you'll do like a cute little chair by a fireplace, and no one's gonna sit in it. Right. It's okay.
Or like for your cocktail party when you're kind of perched.
A lady's just perching on the corner or something. Right. Chandeliers. I love old chandeliers. That's a good one. That's always works. Lighting is good. I don't buy as much or specify antique art as much, just because I think art's the easy thing to do, more modern. But if we do have a client that has antique art, sometimes we'll take the frame off and hang it without a frame. Or we'll take, if it's some etchings or something, and put them, in an acrylic box or something to make them more modern. But the furniture pieces are really, like I said earlier, just pairs. Pairs of chests, pairs of consoles, pairs of demi-lunes, pairs. Love that, and hard to find. Hard to find. Yeah. So I'm always on the lookout for that.
I'm just thinking, like, if someone, is wanting to bring in more antiques, like, what are some good things they could go to? So that list is great and versatile, because I think you want to buy something that's going to work in your next house too. And
absolutely. And I think don't be afraid to mix periods. Some people like to get on a French thing, and that's very Atlanta. Also, but don't just do that. I always try to tell clients, just to make it very continental. That's whether it's a Spanish piece mixed with a French piece, and then I like typically English pieces that are really kind of structured and stiff mixed in with that. So don't try to get on one kick and everything from the same period, same country, same wood species, all that kind of stuff. Don't do that.
Yeah. What about woods? Okay, because like I can imagine you've got an old dining table. Like, what about? Do you have to coordinate the wood of the sideboard with the dining table, and then what about the chair
Well, it needs
leg?
to work well together. It doesn't need to be the same. In fact, I prefer not to be the same. And I pray all the time that real brown furniture is coming back, and I think it might be a little bit. But we spend a lot of time taking traditional mahogany, or cherry, or things that are dark and red, and refinishing them. And more than refinishing, we just kind of bleach them and let them be natural. We like to take something, it could be, a HEPA white sideboard that's beautiful as it is, but it just doesn't feel right for the project. And we'll just take it and take all the finish off of it, maybe wax it a little bit, and it just feels so much better.
Yeah.
Take the shine off. We're not real shiny people right now. We want a lot of shine. But yeah, I mean, I love it. Like, it's this nice, simple double pedestal dining table, but then the sideboard could have a lot more going on. Some amazing Greek key on the front or something, and that works. And one could be walnut, one could be mahogany, and just as long as it works together.
Okay.
Again, it's all about balancing the space. The volume and the color and everything in the space needs to be balanced.
Tones, maybe.
Tones, yeah.
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
similar undertones or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Because I love the idea of refinishing it, but there's also a part where you're like, oh, am I like...
Yeah, am I devaluing it?
Yeah, am I like ruining it? But I remember Karen at one point saying that like when they go, our president, who often goes, we go on shopping trips to Europe, saying like all the antique dealers, they change the finish all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that, at least for me, has been like, oh, okay. If they're doing it, I suppose it's okay.
Well, I think they're doing it. A lot of things that have been redone that you might not even know. Some pine piece may have been stained walnut or something because that's what they're selling. So they'll have done a lot of the work, and you might think, oh, that's authentic, and I don't want to touch it. But chances are, the hardware might have been changed to be a little less ornate because that's what's selling. And I've never been afraid to do that.
Okay.
I remember Dan Carruthers, an old, well-known Atlanta designer that's no longer with us, would buy these amazing antique chests and would make a sink base out of them. Like, he's going to cut that top. And it was like, well, now it's functional. Now we can use it. Now that you still the rest of the beauty. And it's like lessons like that I've learned over the years. Don't be afraid to adjust something or change it up a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, those were some of my questions. We can transition if we want to.
No. Is there anything you are finding you're selling a lot of right now? I know you spoke to brown furniture, but
you try not to dictate your own personal preferences and all on clients, but it just kind of happens, and that's just what happens.
They're asking your opinion.
Yeah,
so.
I love Biedermeier.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. I don't think like Biedermeier that gets too yellow and gold in a finish, but I love the simplicity of a lot of Biedermeier. So if I were to find a pair of Biedermeier demi-lunes, for example, I'm trying to, if I can afford it, I'll take those because that's something so easy to use, even in almost totally modern interiors. I gravitate to antiques that don't have a lot of ornamentation. I just personally like things that are a little tailored. I think that's easier to mix in with everything else you're doing. I'm a huge walnut fan. I just love the tones of walnut.
It's kind of a great in between.
Exactly.
It's not too red.
Right.
It's not too,
it's
like
the most
kinda...
chocolatey of naturally.
Yeah. And then lately, which I thought I'd never be, we're doing a lot of oak. My dad, I kind of got into this a little bit. My dad was a big antique collector, and we'd spend a lot of Saturdays as kids, on trips to antique shops or going to auctions and things. And it's kind of fun that I've kind of got back into that world. But there's all these, pine pieces, that came from castles or whatever, a sideboard from some castle's kitchen or whatever. And that was not the finer pieces. It was the oak and the pine. Those things were for, the servants' quarters and what have you. And I never really liked them But now it's like, it's come to where, I really do. I really do like that. I have a caramel finish maybe or what have you. So even at my age, my taste changes or it kind of comes full circle.
I kind of like them too. They sometimes can like kind of dress something down a little bit in a nice way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially if itself is a beautiful shape.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Instead of a chunky cabin-esque feel.
Well, exactly. I'm working on a project now, and this client showed us these antique chairs, and the legs were so chunky. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was almost like, so it feels so heavy. Like, I don't even know how you move the chairs, and I was trying to offend them, and like the legs are just too chunky. And I think there are periods and styles that it's just I'd rather have an elegant, just a simple leg on a chair. But
I feel like nobody really likes that Victorian like upholstery. Like you never see that coming back.
So people ask me other things you can't do, and that probably is something I just don't think I could do.
They're also just not very comfortable. Like the tight seat, the tight back. Like no, there's nothing appealing about it.
I know.
Really? I mean,
I know.
I've never seen one really.
I totally agree with you. I just don't know why and how, and there are some things that I don't think I can do.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good eras. There's so many handful of bad ones. So.
Yeah. Some that are harder to fit, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to circle back to kind of your beginnings, because I think it really speaks to your work now. And so will you tell people how you started in fashion and how that...
It's so funny. People, of course, ask me this all the time.
Then never mind.
We
don't want the answer.
No, it's just not a great story. I mean, it's an okay story. It's just like, it was an accident. So I went to the University of Georgia back when you didn't really have to study and you had a big time. You could get in the University of Georgia. And I wanted to stay in Athens a little longer and started working at a men's clothing store. It was just my excuse to stay, and which I loved. And I always liked fashion. I always wanted to, be the cool guy and dressed in whatever. And so I started doing that. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got to do something. I've got to move on. Well, the company invited me to come to their corporate offices. A very well-known men's clothing brand had retail stores, and I became a buyer. Oh. So, I have a journalism degree, not even a design degree. And I'm like, okay, this is easy and this is good. And I really love it. I learned all about, I can tell you everything you need to know about men's ties, neckwear, dress shirts, whatever you need to know. And I became a buyer. And this was going really up the totem pole, and they were going to move me to Chicago where the company was based. Okay, I can do that. And then I'm like, no, I can't do that. It's just too cold, and it's just, just all the things. A little Southern boy. My dad just passed away. I think I need to stay in the South. So my college sweetheart said that she lived up on Lake Hartwell near here in Atlanta. And so, well, I used to babysit for the CEO of this apparel company, this apparel manufacturer that's based there. And so I went and interviewed for the job. They offered me the job the next day. And I'm like, oh, hold on. I don't know if I can move to a small town, which I did for 20 years. I'll start looking for a job. And I was there 20 years, and all of a sudden, like, I'm the number 2 guy in this gargantuan company. Wow. So it was great. And it was really great. It's like, Ballard, it's a big company with lots of people, and you're buying and you're designing and you're doing all these things. And I loved it. And then, it was time for a change. Yeah. So I had some personal stuff that happened that kind of triggered it and makes you think, well, I want to do something I love every day. This is going to be too big. I'm not getting to be creative, which is the part I loved. And I'm working with customs agents and bankers and tax attorneys and lawyers. And it was just a corporate job. Yeah. So I had interior design was a hobby because there was not a lot to do in this small town, and I didn't play golf or fish, and that was kind of the only things you did. So I went back and studied interior design as a hobby. And we bought this amazing Victorian house, and we did it, and it was fun, and it was it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I was going to be an interior designer. And I knocked on a door of an Atlanta firm and said, hey, I'll basically work for free. I just want to learn the business. And I'd done well enough. It was okay that I didn't make money anymore. And I was going to slow down. This was in my 40s. I'm going to slow down and life would be good. And it just kind of snowballed. Got great clients, and the business just grew. And, I've never worked so hard in my life. And I'm trying to slow down again, and it's just hard to do. And we've been very fortunate. And it's really all about the clients. We have had amazing clients. But, the fashion days were wonderful. I mean, I probably know more about fabric construction than any other interior designer. But I always tell people that the industries are so similar. Scale is scale, proportions are proportions, colors are colors, fabrics are fabrics.
Yeah.
It's just so related. Even putting a floor plan is so much like, drawing a pattern for, a pair of pants or whatever. It's very related. And I do think it's influenced my work from, the quality of fabrics I use and the sewing details that are kind of hidden that somebody might do, or, thinking about the inside of something or the lining of something or the way it's trimmed out and just some of those things. And I do like, menswear fabrics. I try not to peg us as being overly masculine, but sometimes we do gravitate that way. I mean, I love a gray flannel upholstered library, or some of those things you would say stereotypical or menswear. Just I love that.
Yeah.
Not that's all we do, but I think I can appreciate things from that fashion point of view.
Yeah.
And I still follow it. I still, I'm, one of the odd, people probably, my friend group that reads Vogue. They probably aren't. My guy friends are not reading Vogue. I am fortunate to get to experience fashion through some of my affluent clients and go to, a Dior show or a Louis Vuitton show, and so I'm really all into that. And typically, the big trade show we go to in Paris in January, it overlaps with the men's shows, so we're all in part of that. And I love that. I think I've been in the business long enough to see how interior design used to follow fashion year or two or three later, whether it's color or whatever, but it's so close now. So close.
Yeah.
It's almost simultaneous. We'll go to Paris in January and see the new fabrics that come out. Well, you might just as well see that on a runway. Toile came back, and I don't know if it came back in our industry in a big way or if it did in fashion. But in Dior still doing toile, and it's just like it's so. I love that part where it kind of runs side by side now, and that influences what we do. We try to stay on top of that because some of our clients are very savvy and very influenced by fashion and travel and all those things that we all love. Yeah.
Well, it does seem like to be I think, recurring trend amongst the designers we talk to. And partially I think it's because when you're younger, like it's much easier to sort of grab onto fashion because it's something that you're doing every day anyway.
Right.
You're already getting dressed every day. So it's kind of like one of your first creative endeavors. And so you think, oh, well, like I'm going to go into fashion. It seems so glamorous. Like I already know I like it. And then, I think interior design is not always as obvious a choice when you're young.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think that all of us interior designers would have to say we're influenced by fashion, and then sometimes I think, well, am I too influenced by that because it's what I've done and what I know? So I try to think differently. Like I want to be more influenced by art or travel or food or wine or those kinds of things. I think can really influence what we do in interiors.
Yeah.
I think interiors, there's a lot more thought and comfort and functionality, more so than fashion sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's a much bigger investment. I mean,
right.
I
can wear heels for a few hours. But,
right.
But you're going to sit in that chair every night.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you don't really think about like the average thing you're buying for your wardrobe. You're not like, oh, I'm going to have this for 20 years. You might have it for 20, but that's not necessarily what you're going in hoping when you buy it. Whereas a dining table, you're like, okay, well,
this is it. You think of that.
You're hopeful. Yeah, you want it to. That's the goal.
Yeah, for sure. And then clients will question that sometime, like, well, I might get tired of it. I'm like, well, let's invest in these key pieces, like this sofa that's beautifully made, it's upholstered over and over and over. Now, if it's a lampshade that we might want to do some whimsical color or whatever, that can be more like fashion, a little more disposable. It's like that scarf that you might wear this season and not the next season. I'm always preaching investing in the right pieces and longevity and not doing something that's just a little too trend or whimsical or what have you.
Okay, what do you think are those right pieces? Upholstery?
I like to invest in really good upholstery. I just think because it can really last you your life, for sure.
And it's what it's what you're going to be interacting with more so than
and I think,
sitting
we're
on and-
really keen on focus on functionality and comfort. There's some things that just aren't comfortable, and I want that, that kind of chair I want that, Klissmos chair or whatever, which I love a Klissmos chair better than anything, but it's just not going to be comfortable. That's more something that you're going to sit in a minute, or it's just like a piece in the hall or whatever. Yeah, I think those are always, if there's, you get down to something with a client and it's, well, I like this one because it's prettier, but this one's probably more functional. We're like, let's do functional. Let's really do functional.
Yeah.
And invest in the right things and take your time. I know, all you people you've interviewed say that. Just invest in good things and take your time. Of course, you need dining chairs. And maybe you're not ready to invest in nice dining chairs. So do some really simple Parsons chairs temporarily until you're ready to do it. Don't overspend. And I think that's a big value of what you guys do. Sometimes you can quickly, fill holes as a placeholder a little bit. Not that your things aren't, can have forever and ever. In fact, Parsons chair, I've had some forever and ever. They just do a new slip cover and new slip cover, and just it's all right.
And they're easy to slip cover. So
and they're easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we want that too. Like, use your grandmother's dining table and like some of her chairs, and then add some head chairs, that are upholstered or something. And it doesn't all have to be one or the other.
And we've always been big at mixing high and low. We think that's hugely important. I'll tell a story of one time I did this beautiful antique secretary, and we bought a little lamp to put on it from Target, and it was amazing. Just a simple little, brass lamp, and it's like, why not? That was what we needed, and that's where it was, and yay that it was a good price point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a question from Nancy, unless there's any lingering questions you have. I'm looking at my list. I kind of feel like I asked most of my things. We've covered a lot.
Good. That was two.
And I didn't even know you had
didn't even get to read through his notes.
I know how to use my notes.
Oh.
This is fine. This is good. No,
Is there anything that you...
No, not at all. I was like, little pearls of wisdom was like a name.
No pearls?
Great.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
I'm sure you touched them all. Maybe
You did have some pearls. You might not have known that, but it was definitely some pearls.
Absolutely did.
That's okay.
All right, I'm going to read Nancy's question and then we'll discuss. All right, she says, hello, my daughter suggested I send in this question along with photos. Thank you, Nancy's daughter.
Adorable.
My dilemma is the rugs for this living room. This is a farmhouse, not farmhouse style, but actually a working farmhouse that was somewhat renovated a couple of years ago. As you can see, it has a long room with two distinct areas. I don't even know why I chose the shag, probably too many decisions overload, but everyone, including me, hates them, and they are extremely impractical. This room gets a lot of use from adults, children, and dogs. The big carpet is 10 by 14. The smaller one is about 8 by 8. I'm at a loss. Can I go a little smaller with both rugs? Should I try to get the same rug for both places? I'd like some color in the rugs, but how will that be with the patterns in the chairs? Window coverings are also an issue. I have roll-down shades on all the windows, which I like, but mainly to block the sun at certain parts of the day. The shades are almost always all the way up because the views are so pretty and privacy isn't an issue. But maybe it would look more complete and finished if I put some curtains up. And if so, what? Thank you, Nancy.
Nancy. So the first thing I thought about when I looked at the images was I want to do the opposite of what you're suggesting and doing one big rug. Instead of smaller two rugs, I would love for you to unify the space and actually take the rugs almost all the way to the baseboards, 8 to 10 to 12 inches away from the baseboard. And you don't have to buy just standard sizes. What we love to do and do almost in every project is take just regular wall-to-wall carpeting, have it cut and bound, either serged or, a little trim on the edge or whatever, which you can have that done at lots and lots of places. And have one big rug that follows. You can even cut it around your fireplace, hearth, and really unify the space because it feels like two different rooms together. You have a sofa that's kind of splitting the rooms up. I would love to find another place to put that so it feels a little more open. Whether you're open to doing another kind of piece of furniture, like a chaise, for example, that wouldn't divide the spaces, or switch the chairs at the fireplace with a sofa, and pull that sofa towards that fireplace side of the room to open it up.
Like flip flop, put the sofa, the love seat where the chairs are, and the chairs pulled into
And just the chairs, even though they might be floating in the room, it was to feel a little more open. So I think one big rug, and then the shag. Sadly, I'm old enough to remember when shag was super popular years ago, and it's just not an easy thing to maintain. And I think we even growing up had a rake. That we had to rake
my gosh.
our shag, which was crazy. But yeah, shag is just hard to deal with, and not good for your vacuum cleaner and all those things. But there are amazing performance rugs now. Like so many things you can choose from. Why would you use anything else? I mean, I've got kids and dogs and all those things. I wouldn't consider doing anything that wasn't performance, or at least a natural fiber that's easy to clean. So you'll find lots of choices there. I think you also mentioned not wanting to do a solid. And you have, the pretty window pane on the pair of chairs, and then you have like a big medallion print on a couple of chairs. There's lots of patterns you can do with that, whether it's a nice little herringbone or some other little tone-on-tone pattern, like what we call in our office, which is a RBID proprietary word called ditty dots, which is any small pattern, a repetitious pattern in something, whether it's a dot or a diamond or whatever. Lots of choices where you do some pattern, and patterns do help hide dirt in my mind. So I think that's a good choice.
So she should basically go to a carpet.
Yeah, just go to a carpet store, and they can do that for you.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to do. You don't need a designer at all. Just somebody that does carpet, and you measure your room out, take it to them, they'll cut it up.
And like so much better patterns now than you picture with wall carpet a certain thing, and they're
it's not what you think anymore. It's not just like what you might see in your first apartment. That's just a really disposable carpet. They're beautiful things, whether it's cut or a loop or whatever. There's beautiful choices now. So I think that's going to be easy for you to sort out.
Yeah, that's so nice too, because that way she doesn't have to figure out two sizes.
Yeah, that's almost impossible. And you've got one that's an 8 by 8. I don't even know where you found that size anyway. That's so just not an 8 by 10, but an 8 by 8. Yeah. So that's a challenge.
Okay, so what about her window coverings?
Yeah, I do think it'd be nice to, I certainly understand you don't want to impede the views, but I think some side panels would be great. They don't have to be full draw since you don't need that for privacy. Something simple, probably. I tend to lean in a space like this to doing something that's kind of a tone of the wall color even, so it kind of goes away. Draperies will certainly help with acoustics, and it'll kind of warm the space up. We like to hang draperies as high as we can under the crown molding. And what I'd really like for you to do, since you have a shade that's inside mounted in the window, I prefer an outside mounted shade that I would take all the way just under the drapery hardware and let that hang and cover the bit of window under there between the sheetrock above the window. And then you pull it down, as you need it, if you ever even do that. But that really will give you a finished look and make your ceilings feel taller.
Like a woven shade?
I do love a woven shade.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be lined since you don't need the privacy, but I like a natural woven. Okay. Whether it's a rattan or a linen or a seagrass or something. I think that adds another texture in the space, which would be really nice.
I mean, some pretty drapery panel. I feel like people often worry that a drapery panel will take away from the view, and really kind of draws your eye to the view. So it's
that's absolutely correct. I mean, it really does. It's almost like when I look in the space and it's just simple windows, I kind of just move on by. But if I had a drapery there, it'd make me want to look that way.
Yeah, it makes it more of a focal point.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does.
I love drapery.
Well, there you go, Nancy. Thank you so much for and thank you to Nancy's daughter.
Exactly.
But no, those are, I think, perfect tips and a great plan for her that she can execute. So, Bob, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yes, it was so nice to meet you.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this. It was really great.
Well, we appreciate you coming over and chatting with us. And if you can tell everyone where they can find you and follow you and see your work.
Yeah, robertbrowninteriordesign.com, which when your name is basic like Robert Brown, there are not a lot of other choices, but robertbrowninteriordesign.com. And on social media, it's Robert Roan ID.
Okay.
So yeah, come have a look.
Wonderful. Well, I loved getting to go through your portfolio and study up, and it was really beautiful.
Thank you very much.
And that's our show. You can find all of the show notes on our blog, howtodecorate.com/podcast.
To send in a decorating dilemma, email your questions to podcast@ballarddesigns.net so we can help you with your space.
And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at Ballard Designs.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Until next time,
Happy
happy decorating!